Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I never imagined a place that smelled like sugar, cinnamon, and freshly brewed coffee could ever make me feel scared. Not until that night. For most people, Dunkin is a pit stop, a quick detour on the way to work, a place to grab a large iced coffee or a half-dozen donuts to keep the kids pacified in the back seat. But to me, it was so much more than that. It was my first real job. My safe place. A warm, bustling bubble of normalcy during one of the most uncertain times of my life. I just graduated high school in 2021, and instead of diving into college like most of my friends, I took a gap year. My mom had been recently diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and with my dad completely out of the picture, I couldn't bring myself to leave her alone in Willow Creek. It's a small Indiana town. Not exactly a dot on the map, but close. The kind of place where people still wave at each other on the sidewalk and nothing big ever really happens. Safe, quiet, too quiet sometimes. I figured I'd work for a while, help out at home, save some money, and reapply to colleges once things settled down. That's how I ended up at the Dunkin' on Forest Ridge Drive. It wasn't glamorous by any stretch, but it paid the bills and gave me structure. I usually worked the evening shifts, from 3 p.m. till we closed at 9:30. I liked that time. Fewer customers, a slower pace. Most of the people who came in were regulars, familiar faces, friendly quirks. There was Martha, a retired teacher who always asked for an extra straw and folded it into origami birds. Mr. Green came in every single night around 7:15 without fail, always wearing the same worn-out leather jacket and ordering an Americano with just a dash of room. And then, of course, there were the cops. The Willow Creek Police Department was just a 10-minute walk from our store, so we got officers in all the time. Early morning, mid-shift, late night. Most of them were decent. Some cracked corny jokes that made you roll your eyes. Others actually tipped. A few were just there. But one of them, Detective Miles Carr, was different. He was tall, with those broad detective shoulders that made him look like he belonged in a movie. His hair was going silver at the temples, salt and pepper in a way he probably thought looked distinguished. And it kinda did. He wasn't unfriendly exactly, just intense. The kind of man whose smile never quite reached his eyes. The first time I met him, he walked in with his badge clipped to his belt, ordered a black coffee and 2 maple bars, and didn't look up from his phone once. But when I handed him the bag, he said, "Thanks, Ellie," like we already knew each other. I remember blinking, confused, but I smiled anyway and said, "You're welcome." He hadn't asked for my name. I hadn't worn a name tag that day. I brushed it off. Maybe Ava had told him, or maybe he overheard someone say it. But then he kept coming back, every day, sometimes twice a shift. Once, 3 times in a single evening. At first I assumed he was just bored or really liked maple bars. But soon, it started to feel off. He began showing up 5 minutes before closing, lingering way too long, barely touching his coffee. He'd stare out the windows like he was watching for someone, or hiding from them. He started calling me kid, even though I was 19. There were nights he didn't order anything at all, just stood at the counter and talked, rambling about cases, asking me weird hypothetical questions like what I'd do if I found a stranger hiding in my car. I always smiled, kept my voice polite, never gave him anything real. I kept my hands where he could see them, glanced at the clock every few seconds, and counted the minutes until I could flip the lock. Then came the night everything shifted. It was mid-January, the kind of cold that stings your face and seeps into your bones no matter how many layers you wear. Snow had piled high across the parking lot, the windows fogged up from our breath inside. Ava, my shift partner, had left early. Her daughter had a fever, and I was on my own for closing. It had been a slow day. The display shelves were mostly empty. The floor was swept, machines wiped down. The closed sign flipped on the door. I was halfway through locking the back door when I heard the front bell jingle. My stomach sank like a stone. It had to be a mistake. I must have forgotten to turn the deadbolt, I thought. But when I stepped out of the back hallway and rounded the counter, I stopped dead. Detective Carr stood just inside the doorway. No badge, no uniform. Just a thin gray hoodie, jeans, and boots crusted with snow. His face was pale, flushed red from the cold, or something else. His eyes looked strange, wide, bloodshot, unfocused, unhinged, like he hadn't slept in days. "I need to come in," he said. Not a question, a command. I kept one hand behind me on the lock, my other braced against the counter. "Detective, we're closed." He stepped forward. The snow on his boots melted onto the tile, leaving wet footprints. "You still got maple bars?" I shook my head, trying to keep my voice steady. "No, we sold out around 7. He didn't blink, just swayed there, eyes glassy, lips slightly parted like he was somewhere else entirely. That's when I noticed his hands, scraped knuckles, raw and pink, something dark under one nail. Dried blood? I swallowed hard. Every hair on my arm stood up. Something was really, really wrong. His breath fogged in the narrow space between us, and the smell hit me, sharp, metallic, almost like rust, not alcohol. Something darker, chemical. "You sure?" he asked again, voice low and cracked. "I need one." My throat was so dry I could barely swallow. I can check the back," I stammered, my voice higher than I meant. "But I really think we're out." He didn't move. "Check." I hesitated, then slowly turned toward the storage room. As I passed the counter, I slid my phone into the front pocket of my apron, my fingers trembling. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it echoed off the tile. Every fiber of my body screamed at me to run, but if he followed, I'd be cornered. I moved slowly into the supply room, rustling boxes on the shelves, making noise to buy myself time. I tried to think. I needed a plan. Something. Anything. I strained my ears, listening. His boots scuffed against the floor, inching closer to the counter. And then, nothing. Silence. I turned. He was behind the counter, inside the employee area, breathing heavier now. His head tilted just slightly as if he was trying to figure me out. "You ever think," he murmured, voice like gravel, "about how easy it would be for someone to disappear in a place like this?" I froze. "What?" I whispered. A small smile flickered across his face, there, then gone. No cameras after close. One back door, no neighbors nearby, nobody to hear if someone screamed. I took a step back, then another, until I hit the cold, unforgiving metal of the fridge. "Detective, I think you should go." He took a slow step forward. "No. I think you should stay." The fluorescent lights above us buzzed faintly. My eyes darted around, scanning for something, anything I could use. And then suddenly I was back in the present, staring down at the bandage on my arm. A nurse had wrapped it after checking for cuts, bruises, anything worse. I was lucky, they said. They kept saying that. But I didn't feel lucky. I remembered the moment I snapped. When I grabbed the nearest thing, a rack of coffee filters, and hurled it at him. It caught him off guard just long enough for me to dive into the storage closet and grab the metal broom handle. I don't remember screaming, but I must have. A patrol car passing by saw the light still on. The officer pulled in just as I brought the broom down again. They found Carr unconscious on the floor, face smeared with blood, hands twitching, whispering something over and over that no one could quite understand. The officer who found me was Sergeant Wallace. I'd seen him before. Middle-aged, quiet, one of the good ones. He didn't ask too many questions right away, just wrapped me in his coat, called an ambulance, and waited with me until my mom arrived. They arrested Carr on the spot. Later, they found trace amounts of ketamine and benzodiazepines in his system. The investigation uncovered everything, how he'd been stealing from the narcotics evidence locker for months, using the drugs to dull the effects of PTSD after a series of brutal trauma cases. Turns out, he was never supposed to be on solo duty. He manipulated the schedule, lied to the chief, even threatened a rookie cop who tried to report his erratic behavior. That part didn't make the papers. What did? Local detective snaps, attacks teen in donut shop. Small town horror, Willow Creek cop removed from force. Reporters hounded me for weeks. One even followed me home. I never gave them what they wanted. What was I supposed to say? That the same man who once complimented my coffee skills tried to strangle me with the cord of my own apron? That he told me I reminded him of someone just before smashing the glass of the pastry case with his bare hand? That moment, the sound of it, shards flying, his blood and mine on the tile. That's the part that won't let me go. I haven't stepped inside a Dunkin' since. I tried once 6 months later, sat in the parking lot, hand on the door handle. I couldn't do it. I turned around and left. That fall, I left Willow Creek. I got accepted into a college upstate, took night classes, worked morning shifts at a small bookstore. Wooden floors, soft jazz, no buzzers, no uniforms, no late-night customers. Sometimes when a shop door chimes open, my chest tightens. I still have nightmares. Ones where I'm behind the counter again and I see him, Detective Carr, standing there like it's just another evening, smiling, calm, like nothing ever happened. I wake up shaking, still smelling the mix of sugar, bleach, and fear. Carr pled guilty, assault, drug possession, unlawful entry. The plea deal meant no trial, just 10 years, no parole for the first 7. People in town seemed relieved after that, like they could breathe again. But not me. I still check behind every door before I lock up. Still keep a flashlight under my bed. Still flinch when someone I don't recognize says my name. That night changed everything. And the truth? I don't think it'll ever really be over. Not for me. I never imagined that working at Dunkin' would end with gunfire, but it did. And to this day, the smell of hot coffee makes my stomach twist. It smells like blood to me now. It all started in early October of 2019, when I got hired at the Dunkin' on Colonial Drive just outside Orlando. Not the glitzy theme park part of the city that shows up in travel ads. This was the older side, the forgotten side. Rows of crumbling strip malls, peeling signage, pawn shops, cheap motels with flickering neon signs that never turned all the way off. It was the kind of place where locals lived and didn't talk about it. I was 23, just barely clawing my way out of a mess. I'd lost my last job at a gas station after the manager accused me of stealing cartons of Newports. I didn't, but it didn't matter. I got canned anyway. I was crashing on my cousin's couch at the time, trying not to let everything unravel. So when I landed the Dunkin' job, it felt like a small victory. Nothing glamorous, minimum wage, weird hours, and stale donuts. But it was something. A paycheck. A tiny piece of control. Keith, the manager, was a former Navy guy. Crew cut, sharp eyes, always 2 steps ahead of everyone. Total hard ass. But he was fair. Didn't play favorites, didn't take crap either. My coworkers were a rough mix. Teen dropouts, older folks trying to stay afloat, a few in-betweeners like me. I ended up getting close to 2 of them. Deja was 19, a single mom with a spine of steel. She worked the morning shifts and always wore this loud purple eyeliner, like war paint. Tough on the outside, but she'd sneak you a donut if you looked like you needed it. Then there was Troy, 28, ex-college football player from Seminole State. Knee injury knocked him off course. Now he was slinging coffee and trying not to think too hard about what could have been. We weren't tight exactly, but we had each other's backs. And that mattered more than people realize, especially in a place where customers cursed you out over cold coffee or one missing jelly donut. What I liked best, though, was Halloween season. The weirdos came out, sure, but there was something comforting about it. I've always had a thing for fall, the fake cobwebs, the pumpkin-scented everything, the orange and black decorations we taped up around the drive-through window. For a few weeks, the shop didn't feel quite so run down. It felt cozy, almost, like we were all playing pretend. I was working the closing shift on Halloween night. Just me, Troy, and a quiet part-timer named Mia. She was still pretty new, maybe 2 weeks in. It was a Thursday, kind of slow. We were open till midnight, but traffic had trickled down to a few late-night stragglers. Mostly we were just going through the motions, restocking shelves, wiping down counters, tossing out old pastries. I remember laughing at something Troy said. He was making fun of a guy who'd come in earlier dressed as sexy Frankenstein, torn fishnets, green face paint, the works. We were all a little punchy, tired, just killing time until close. Then he walked in. He didn't look like a threat. Honestly, he looked tired. Mid to late 40s, pale, wiry, wearing black jeans and a navy hoodie. His face was half hidden behind a surgical mask, which didn't strike us as weird at the time. It was flu season. People were starting to get cautious. But his eyes were wrong. I know that sounds like something out of a bad movie, but it's true. His eyes didn't just look cold. They looked hollow, like staring into a tunnel that didn't end, like there was nothing inside him anymore. He didn't approach the counter, just stood by the door looking at the donut case and then at us, watching, waiting. Mia glanced at me, nervous. I gave a little shrug like, I got it, and stepped forward with a smile. Hey man, welcome to Dunkin. You need a minute to check out the menu? He didn't answer, just tilted his head slow and stiff like he didn't understand the question. Then he whispered, barely audible, Order 18. I blinked. We don't really do numbered orders, man. You looking for something specific? Nothing. He just reached inside his coat. At first, I thought he was pulling out a phone. Maybe he had some mobile order confusion. Happens all the time. But it wasn't a phone. It was a gun. Small, black, sleek, no hesitation. He didn't yell, didn't wave it around. He didn't even raise his voice. He just raised his arm and pulled the trigger. The bang shattered the front window. It was so loud and sudden I didn't even process it at first. I just stood there, stunned, blinking through shards of glass. Then I heard Mia scream. She dropped behind the counter, clutching her shoulder, blood gushing between her fingers. The floor beneath her turned dark and wet in seconds. And that's when time warped. Everything slowed down. The lights got too bright, my ears filled with this awful pressure. All I could hear was my own breath, sharp, panicked, and Mia's sobs. I froze. Completely. My brain just shut off. I didn't think to run, didn't move, couldn't. But Troy didn't freeze. He tackled me to the floor so hard the wind rushed out of my lungs. I didn't even realize what was happening until I felt him grabbing my arms, dragging me through the narrow hallway toward the back prep area. "Get up!" Troy shouted. His voice was frantic, sharp. He shoved me behind the metal rack stacked with 50-pound bags of flour and plastic tubs of coffee beans. "We need to move. He's still out there." But I couldn't. My body wouldn't listen. My legs felt like rubber. My mind was stuck in a loop, spinning. What the hell is happening? Who is this guy? Why here? Why now? I couldn't even make sense of it. Just sound and chaos and that awful metallic smell of hot espresso mixed with blood. More gunshots rang out, fast and sharp. One hit the espresso machine. It hissed and exploded in a plume of steam, a boiling cloud filling the kitchen. Another round cracked into the speaker by the drive-thru, sending sparks and plastic shrapnel everywhere. Troy grabbed the wooden mop handle we used to prop the back door open on hot days. He clutched it like a weapon, hands shaking, eyes locked on the prep room entrance. "Hey, you sick Gandonan!" he screamed. "Come back here!" "No, no, no," I whispered, grabbing at his arm. Don't yell. Don't make him come back." But he wouldn't listen. Troy burst out of the prep area, the mop handle swinging in his grip like a bat, screaming curses into the steam and broken glass. His voice was wild, furious, like maybe if he was loud enough he could scare death away. I heard another gunshot, then nothing, just silence. like the world had been switched off. I started crawling. My muscles ached, my knees scraped the tile. But I had to move, had to see, had to know. I found Mia first. She was crumpled on the floor near the counter, still alive, breathing in sharp, shallow gasps. Her eyes were glossy with pain, her face pale. She was pressing a wad of napkins to her shoulder, sobbing softly. "Troy," she whimpered, not even looking at me. "Where's Troy?" I couldn't answer. I didn't want to. I needed to see it myself before I let the truth in. I crept toward the dining area, each step echoing in my head like a drum. The air smelled like burnt sugar and copper. The coffee machines were hissing. A donut box had toppled to the floor, jelly smeared across the tile like something torn open. And there was Troy. Face down, blood pooled beneath his chest, spreading slow and steady. His eyes were wide open, staring at nothing. Gone. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember walking outside. Somehow I ended up on the sidewalk, my hands sticky with Mia's blood, my brain completely empty. The 911 call I barely managed to make had brought the cops in fast. Sirens, flashing lights, radios barking orders into the night. But the shooter was gone. Just gone. The footage showed him walking in, pulling the gun, then slipping out the back emergency door like a ghost. Vanished. No prints, no ID, no clear motive, no face. Just a man in a navy hoodie who stepped into our lives and ripped them apart. Troy was dead. Mia was wounded. And I was something else now. I quit the next day. Didn't even go back to collect my final check. Just called Keith and told him I was done. I didn't sleep for weeks. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that first gunshot again. Saw the window explode. Smelled the coffee and the blood mixing in the air. Therapy helped. A little. Enough to get me through the days without breaking down in grocery store aisles. But nothing could erase what I saw, what I heard, what I felt when I looked down and saw Troy's eyes. We used to mop that tile floor together. Used to laugh about how it stayed sticky for days after the Halloween rush. Now I can't look at a glazed donut without thinking of red streaks across linoleum. I started keeping a journal after that. Not for healing, not for processing, just to remind myself that I'm still here, still breathing, that Troy's death wasn't meaningless, that Mia's still alive and walking, that life, even after horror, keeps going. But I never stopped wondering. What the hell did he mean by Order 18? I asked the cops. Nothing. I asked Keith. He just shook his head, confused. Some people speculated maybe the guy used to work there. Maybe it was some messed up revenge fantasy. But I looked. I checked. There were no employee records, no customer complaints, no order slips labeled 18. Nothing that made sense. Just those two words, spoken in a voice so quiet, it still echoes in my skull. Some nights I dream I'm back behind the counter. The door swings open. He walks in, same hoodie, same dead eyes. In the dream, I talk to him. I ask, "Why us?" And he always says the same thing. Because someone has to. Then I wake up. Every single time. I still don't know who he was. Still don't know what he wanted. But he changed everything. I live differently now. Not fearfully, but purposefully. For Troy. For Mia. For the people who came in that night just wanting coffee. Not knowing they were stepping into a nightmare. I still write in my journal. Still keep every detail fresh. Because even if the world forgets, I won't. I swore I'd never work another night shift after what happened at that gas station outside Harrisburg. I mean it. That job nearly wrecked me. It's not just the hours, you know? It's what happens at 3 in the morning. The way the parking lot goes dead quiet. The way some customers don't seem to blink when they talk. The way you start feeling like you're the last living thing for miles. But bills don't care about your nerves. and my savings were already circling the drain after I got laid off from the warehouse temp gig. So when the Dunkin on Front Street in York called me back about their overnight opening, I said yes before I could talk myself out of it. It's just coffee and donuts, I told myself. How bad could it be? Most nights I work alone. Cassie, the manager, comes in to open with me at 5 on Fridays, but every other night it's just me, 11 to 5. I prep trays, keep the ovens humming, deal with the occasional weirdos, and watch the horizon for dawn. It's a small place, one of those setups inside a gas station connected to a mini-mart and a couple of pumps outside. Usually quiet, or it used to be. Overnights have this strange rhythm. The silence becomes a kind of music. The occasional hiss from the espresso machine, the low hum of the refrigerators. I'd put on old true crime podcasts just to hear another voice. Sometimes the same two cops would stop in, always black coffee and a Boston cream each. Same tired jokes about breakfast of champions. But then there was that night in late February. I won't ever forget it. It was right after a freak snowstorm. You know, the kind that turns every road into black ice and keeps everyone home unless they have to go out. The shift started the same as always. Me, the ovens, and a Spotify playlist called Caffeine Insomnia. Around 2:20, I stepped outside for a cigarette. The snow still lay heavy on the sidewalks, glittering under the harsh gas station lights. The whole parking lot looked like a painting. Soft and quiet, blue-white and empty. Peaceful even. Then I saw him. At first I thought it was just some guy passing by on the sidewalk, bundled up in a long brown coat, maybe heading to the shelter or the bus station down the block. But there was something about him that made me stop mid-drag. He wasn't moving like someone in the cold. Didn't hunch. Didn't even seem to feel it. He walked tall, slow, hands just hanging loose at his sides like he didn't care that the snow was soaking through his shoes. Every step looked deliberate. I stubbed out my smoke and slipped back inside, shaking off the chill. A few minutes later, the bell above the door chimed. It was him, same man. Tall, maybe late 50s, pale face, no hat, no gloves, that long brown coat dripping wet to the knees. His white stubble caught in the fluorescent light, and when he grinned, his yellow-gray teeth turned my stomach. But what really got me were his eyes. Not angry, not wild, just vacant. Like he wasn't all there. Like he was staring through everything. "Morning," I said, my voice a little tighter than I wanted it to be. He didn't answer, just walked straight to the glass case and stared at the donuts, and kept staring, way longer than normal. I pretended to busy myself, wiping down the counter, sneaking glances every few seconds. But he didn't move, didn't even twitch. Finally, I tried again. "You, see something you like?" Nothing at first. Then, so slowly it made my skin crawl, he turned his head toward me. Just his head, not his body, like his neck was a rusty hinge. His eyes met mine and he said, "You ever smell something so good, you forget you don't got teeth?" I froze. My rag stayed pressed against the counter and my mouth went dry. "Sorry, what?" I croaked. That's when he grinned. Wide, too wide. And I realized he didn't have any teeth. His gums glistened, raw, shiny, and wrinkled like chewed-up bubblegum stretched thin. He just stood there, smiling like he'd told the funniest joke in the world. I forced out a nervous little laugh, though my stomach was churning. "We got soft ones, too," I called over, forcing a little smile. "Muffins, or I can heat something up if you want." Nothing. He just kept staring at me, then at the donuts, then back at me. "Got jelly," I added, my voice cracking slightly. "Yeah, strawberry, blueberry too." Finally, he raised a bony finger and pointed. "The one with red?" "Strawberry," I said, nodding. "Yeah, strawberry it is." I boxed it up quick, slid the little white carton across the counter. He didn't reach for his wallet, didn't even acknowledge me. Just picked it up with those long, pale fingers, turned, and walked to the little table in the corner, the one tucked near the bathroom hallway. He sat down, hunched over the box like it was something precious. Then he started sniffing it, not eating, not even opening it right away. Just leaning in close, breathing through his nose in these heavy, slow drags, pulling in the sugary smell like it was some kind of narcotic. I wiped the counter down just to keep my hands busy, watching him out of the corner of my eye. He didn't move. For maybe 5 minutes, that's all he did. Inhale, exhale, again and again, soft little grunts coming out of him like he was savoring it. I opened my mouth to ask if he was okay when he made this sound that stopped me cold. He moaned, not loud, but long, low, the kind of sound you hear when someone's trying hard not to let something terrible crawl out of them. I froze, cloth in my hand, just watching him. Then, Jesus. He opened his mouth, wide, too wide, way too wide. His jaw stretched farther than it should have, like his skin was about to tear, and he shoved the whole donut into his mouth. He didn't chew, didn't bite, just sucked it back like an animal, gulping it down whole. I could see his throat working, convulsing as it slid down. I swear to God I heard him growl as it went. I felt my stomach twist. My hands went clammy. When he finally looked up at me, his lips were slick with jelly and he licked them slowly. "You got more?" he rasped. I nodded, hesitated. "You want another jelly?" He started to stand. His eyes rolled slightly in his head and he whispered, "No. Something that bleeds." I backed up a step, bumping the counter. "Listen, man," I stammered. This is a donut shop, okay? We don't..." He took a step toward me. His shoes left wet prints on the tile. "Something that bleeds." My fingers groped blindly under the register until they found the little black button. I pressed it hard, praying the silent alarm worked, praying someone would come. "Sir, you need to leave. Now." He froze. Then, just like that, he turned around, walked to the door, and slipped outside. No fight, no yelling, just gone. I stood there in silence for what felt like a whole minute before my body moved again. I locked the door, shut everything down early, and waited. Cops showed up maybe 20 minutes later, lights flashing outside on the snow. "The guy's gone," I told them. "Long gone." I showed them the security footage anyway. They crowded around the little screen behind the counter, watching him move across the frame. None of them said much. After a while, one of them, older, tired-looking, asked quietly, "You ever seen that man before tonight?" I shook my head. "No, never." He stared at the screen for a moment longer, then turned to me. His voice was low when he spoke. "That man," he said, "we found his body 2 weeks ago. Froze to death in the alley behind the shelter. Same coat, same face, no teeth. We had to ID him by his fingerprints." I just stared at him, my mouth dry. "I'm telling you," I said. "He was here." The cop just looked at me for a beat, then patted my shoulder. "Go home. Get some rest," he murmured. "Since that night, I've worked every shift with the front door locked. Customers have to knock now if they want in. My boss isn't happy about it. She keeps threatening to write me up, but I told her the truth. I can't open that door again. Not until I know the next guy I serve has a pulse." I used to work the evening shift at a Dunkin Donuts just outside a mid-sized town called Milford, about a 20-minute drive from where I lived. Honestly, it wasn't the worst gig I'd ever had. It paid the rent while I took part-time classes at the local community college, and I could drink as much coffee as I wanted. Most nights I'd clock in around 2 p.m. and close up just before 11 a.m. Nothing glamorous, sure, but quiet enough on weeknights that I could zone out, wipe down counters, and sneak a few donuts when nobody was looking. I've always been a gaming nerd. Like, always. So when the Xbox One X dropped, it felt like everyone in my circle was scrambling to get one. It was the first console that promised true 4K gaming without all the usual marketing crap, and man, I wanted it bad. I'd been saving for months, cutting back on gas station snacks, skipping weekend hangs, hoarding every tip I could just to afford it. Black Friday came around and I thought I had a shot. I woke up at 3:30 a.m., threw on a hoodie, and drove to the Milford Walmart. There were already over 100 people waiting when I got there, all of us freezing and clutching coffee cups. By the time I made it to the electronics section, every single console was gone. The clerk didn't even look at me when he shook his head. I kept trying for 2 more weeks, checking websites, refreshing apps, even setting up price alerts. But everything online was jacked up, double or even triple the retail price. There was no way I could afford that. Then one night, sitting in my car after a shift, I got lucky, or at least it felt like luck. I was scrolling Craigslist, thumb flicking through all the usual junk ads, when one caught my eye. Xbox One X. Unopened. Original retail price, $499. No shady firm-on-price nonsense. No bidding war, no weird trade for a dirt bike garbage, just selling Xbox One X brand new, $499. Need cash before holidays. At first I thought, no way. Too good to be true. Craigslist is sketchy on the best of days, and I knew it. But hell, I'd been obsessing over this thing for weeks. I figured if I moved fast, maybe I'd finally score one. So right there in the Dunkin parking lot, still wearing my apron, I emailed him, told him I was interested, cash in hand, and even offered to meet somewhere close or kick in a little extra for gas if he wanted to deliver. I didn't expect him to reply right away. But he did, almost instantly. Said his name was Nate. He still had the Xbox and he sounded normal, polite even, not pushy. He explained he was running holiday errands all day but could swing by my place that evening if I was home. That's when I froze. I'd heard too many Craigslist horror stories. Meeting at home? Yeah, no thanks. So I texted back, "Hey, can we meet somewhere public? Maybe the Dunkin where I work? Safer that way." He replied a few minutes later, "Sorry, man. I'm slammed today and only have a short window tonight. Can't really drive all over town. Totally understand if you're not comfortable." He even threw in a little shrug emoji. I sat there staring at the screen, my breath fogging up the inside of my windshield. 10 minutes of back and forth later, I gave in. I'd come so close to getting the Xbox, and after all that saving and waiting, well, I actually said it out loud to myself right there in the dark parking lot. "What the hell?" I muttered, shaking my head with a little grin, and I told him, "Yeah, my place works. See you tonight." At least I figured I'd be home. If anything felt weird, I could just close the door and be done with it. I texted him my address, and he shot back right away. "Cool. Be there by 9. That night, I waited. Still in my Dunkin uniform, apron balled up on the couch beside me, porch light glowing like a beacon. I kept glancing at the clock. 9. Oink came and went. Then 10. Oink. I sent him a text. "Hey, still coming?" Nothing. Half an hour later. "You good? Let me know if you're still planning to drop it off." Silence. By midnight, I'd already written it off. Another scam. Or maybe he found someone who offered more. Hell, maybe it was just some jerk getting kicks wasting my time. Still, I felt sick over it. I'd let myself believe it was really happening. That stupid little spark of hope. That I was finally going to hold the console I'd been obsessing over. I was in the bathroom, brushing my teeth and trying to push it out of my head when I heard it. A knock, not at the front door, at the living room window. It was so soft, barely there. Tap, tap, tap. Like whoever it was didn't really want to be heard. I froze, toothbrush hanging from my mouth. My phone was still plugged in on the kitchen counter. Quiet as I could, I set the toothbrush down, padded into the hallway, and peeked through the blinds. There was a man standing by the front step. He wasn't looking at the door. He was scanning the street like he was checking to see if anyone was watching him. My heart was hammering. I made damn sure the deadbolt was thrown before edging closer. Then he knocked again, on the front door this time, a little louder, and then I heard his voice. "Hey, it's Nate," he called, almost too casually. "Sorry I'm late. Got sidetracked. You still got the cash?" He didn't look anything like I'd pictured. Hood pulled low over his face, maybe mid-30s. Scruffy beard, no box, no bag, no Xbox anywhere in sight. His hands stayed buried in the big front pocket of his hoodie. I didn't open the door all the way, just enough to talk through the screen. "Yeah, I've got it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You got the Xbox with you?" He nodded and jerked his thumb toward the driveway. "In the van. Come with me and I'll grab it." I leaned sideways and spotted a white panel van idling at the curb. The exhaust puffed white in the cold air. Someone else sat in the passenger seat, just a silhouette watching. "I'm good just grabbing it here if you don't mind," I said firmly. "No problem," he replied. But his tone had changed, sharper now, irritated. "Let me just grab my wallet," I said, and stepped back inside. I locked the door, grabbed my phone from the kitchen counter, and ducked behind the wall. My hands were shaking as I punched in 911. Before I could even finish telling the dispatcher my address, there was a hard thud against the front door, so hard it rattled the hinges. Then I heard the van's tires screech. By the time the cops showed up, the street was quiet again. But they found something. Buried in the wooden frame of my front door was a hatchet. Not just a nick or a scratch, a full-on weapon, buried deep into the wood. I gave them everything I had. The Craigslist username, the burner number he'd used to text me. They traced nothing. The post was already gone. The phone was off, probably ditched somewhere. He'd never intended to sell me anything. That was never the plan. He just needed someone willing to open their door. Be careful out there, especially when you're desperate, especially around the holidays. I used to think the worst part of working at Dunkin was dragging myself out of bed at 4:30 a.m., still half dreaming as I threw on the visor, tied my apron, and headed into that artificial glow of fluorescent lights and burnt coffee. You never really shake the smell. It clings to your skin and your hair like secondhand smoke. But that was before he started showing up. Back then I was just trying to scrape together enough money for college. My name's Kesha Daniels. I was 22, living in a cheap apartment in eastern Pennsylvania, splitting rent with a roommate I barely knew. The job was supposed to be simple, close to campus, no drama, and not the kind of place to ask too many questions. Just clock in, smile, get through the shift, and pray no one wanted a dozen bagels 10 minutes before close. The Dunkin I worked at sat on South 25th Street, wedged between a dry cleaner and a gas station. It wasn't the kind of place you'd see in commercials. No trendy lighting or smiling influencers. Just beige walls, tile floors that never quite lost their stickiness, and regulars who came in like clockwork. Commuters, truckers, 2 local cops who always cracked the same jokes, and delivery drivers heading back across the Jersey line. The kind of place where you noticed when someone didn't belong. That's why I remember the first time he walked in. It was a Tuesday. I know, because I usually opened on Tuesdays with Marcy, our assistant manager. Only that morning, Marcy called out sick, something about her kid having a fever, so I had to open alone. I wasn't thrilled, but I'd done it before. I got there just before 5, still rubbing the sleep from my eyes. Flipped on the brewers, counted the drawer, unlocked the doors, and started setting up the front counter. By 5:45, I'd sold 2 black coffees and a sausage croissant. Then the bell over the door chimed again. He walked in like he owned the place. Shoulders squared, steps too slow and steady. He was tall, maybe 6'3", and built like someone who'd done time. Not bulky, but hard, wiry muscle, pale skin that looked somehow gray in the overhead lights, and these big, cracked hands that looked like they'd been through a wood chipper. He wore a dark hoodie with the hood pulled back, and jeans that sagged just enough to make me uneasy. But it was his eyes that got me. Ice blue, nearly colorless like frost on a windshield. He didn't look at the menu. He looked at me, unblinking, calculating. I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced a smile. "Morning," I said, trying to keep my tone upbeat but neutral. He didn't respond, just kept walking, right up to the counter, leaned in a little, his head cocked like he was listening to something I hadn't said yet. "Can I help you?" I asked, already bracing for something weird. "Boston cream," he said finally. His voice was dry, like sandpaper, and a hot chocolate. "Sure, that'll be $4.18. He pulled a 5 from his pocket and slid it across the counter without breaking eye contact. I gave him his change, turned to grab the donut and pour the drink, trying not to let my hands shake. When I turned back around, he was still staring at me. Same dead-eyed smile. Not wide, just enough to show he liked whatever was playing out in his head. He took the food and sat down at the table, closest to the register, even though the rest of the place was empty. He didn't touch the donut right away, just sat there, unwrapping the napkin, folding it, lining everything up like he was preparing a ritual. He ate slow. Painfully slow. Every bite of that donut was deliberate, and every sip of the hot chocolate was silent. He didn't glance at the windows, didn't check his phone. His gaze stayed locked on me the entire time. I busied myself, cleaned the counter twice, restocked stirrers, refilled the napkin holders, anything to avoid looking back. When he finally stood up and walked out, I let out this breath I hadn't realized I was holding. It came out loud and shaky, and I actually laughed from the release of it. But the next day he came back. Same time, 2 p.m. sharp, same order, same seat, same stare, and then again, and again. By the 4th day, he started talking. Not much, just a few questions. Casual if you weren't paying attention, but to me they felt like pressure on the back of my neck. "You live around here? You got a boyfriend? What time you get off?" I kept my responses clipped, polite, but robotic. "Just here for the job, sir." I kept the smile fixed, but inside I was screaming. I told Marcy, I told Paul, our store manager. Marcy frowned but didn't say much. Paul just sighed and rubbed his face. "If he doesn't touch you or threaten you, there's not much we can do," he said. "We can't kick out a paying customer." So I started asking for kitchen duty around 2 p.m., just to be out of sight. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes he'd wait me out. "I missed you yesterday," he'd say, voice low like it was a shared secret. "Don't hide back there forever." Or, "We should hang out sometime. Get you out of this place." It got bad enough I started keeping pepper spray in my apron pocket, finger always near the trigger. I told my roommate. I told my older brother. I didn't know what else to do. They all said the same thing. Quit. My brother, my roommate, even the night shift cop who sometimes came in for coffee and noticed how pale I looked. But I couldn't. Rent was due. Tuition was hanging over me like a guillotine. I kept telling myself maybe it would stop. Maybe he'd get bored and move on. But deep down, I knew I was wrong. The morning it happened, it was a Sunday. I remember because I had barely slept the night before. I kept replaying his voice in my head. Those slow, deliberate questions. "You got a boyfriend? What time you get off?" I was covering the early shift again. The sun wasn't even up when I got there, 4:45 a.m. The sky was still the kind of black that makes the fluorescent lights inside feel like interrogation lamps. Sundays were usually dead. A few stragglers, maybe a nurse coming off a double. I unlocked the front doors at exactly 5 a.m. At 5:02, the door chimed. It was him. My chest tightened like someone had wrapped barbed wire around it. He'd never come in the morning before. Ever. He was always a 2 p.m. shadow. He stood in the doorway for a long beat, just watching. Not walking in, not moving, just waiting. Then he stepped forward, slow and sure, the way people do in dreams when you realize too late that you can't run. "Good to see you," he said. But something was different. His voice. There was a brightness to it, not cheerful. Manic. I swallowed hard and forced my voice to steady. "Can I take your order?" He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned in over the counter, way too close. His eyes were huge, bugging out of his skull, pupils small. And his grin, it wasn't just wide, it was wrong. Too many teeth, like it hurt to hold his face like that. "You're alone today," he said softly. My hand inched toward the phone. My fingers hovered just above the keypad. "Sir," I said, keeping my voice as firm as I could, "if you're not going to order, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." That's when he jumped. No warning. No words. Just a blur of movement. He vaulted over the counter like it was nothing, landed right beside me with a thud that rattled the coffee pots. I screamed. I ran. I burst through the swinging door into the back, heart jackhammering in my chest. The kitchen was small, 2 steps wide maybe. There was nowhere to go except the storage closet. I slammed the door and tried to latch it. Click, click. But it was too late. The door burst open. He shoved his way in, pressing me back into the metal shelves. My shoulder hit a box of syrup cups and they tumbled to the floor. His face was right there, inches from mine. His breath was hot and sour like milk left out too long. His eyes were bloodshot, unblinking. That grin still hadn't moved. "Pretty girl," he whispered. "Donut." Then he paused. Just stopped. His expression went slack. And just like that, he stepped back, smoothed his hoodie like he was resetting himself. "I want my donut," he said, like we were picking up from a conversation we never had. He turned and walked to the microwave. Calm, almost bored. I stood frozen, knees shaking so badly I could barely move. My whole body was humming with adrenaline, my vision narrowed to a pinprick. Somehow I moved. I grabbed a chocolate donut with trembling hands, put it in the microwave. The seconds ticked down slower than time should ever be allowed to move. When it beeped, I handed it to him. He took a bite, chewed, smiled again, then said, "Taste it." My throat closed up. "No," I managed to whisper. "Taste it," he said again, louder this time. He stepped closer. I could feel the heat rolling off him like he had a fever. I didn't know what to do. Every instinct told me not to, but I did it. I took a bite. It was warm, sweet, dry, but every chew made me want to gag. He watched me like he was trying to carve my reaction into his brain. I swallowed. Then slowly he reached into his hoodie pocket. I froze. My mind screamed, knife, gun, acid. But he pulled out a crumpled $5 bill and placed it gently on the counter. "Tip," he said. Then he turned around and walked out. Just like that. I dropped to the floor the second the door closed behind him. My knees gave out. I was sobbing before I even touched the tile. Somehow, with shaking hands, I called the cops. By some miracle, a patrol car was nearby. They caught him 2 blocks away, walking calmly like it was just another morning. He didn't resist, didn't speak, just smiled. The footage backed me up. Everything I said, every second of it, it was all on camera. He had a record, long one, stalking, harassment, psych holds, but he knew how to play the system. He'd always stopped just short of breaking the line. This time, he crossed it. I had to testify. I stood up in court and told the whole story under fluorescent lights while he sat there, silent and smiling. After that, I couldn't go back. Not just to Dunkin', to anywhere that smelled like sugar and fryer oil. Every time the bell over a door chimed, I flinched. Every customer's face turned into his. I moved back home, got therapy. Slowly, I got better. Mostly. But even now, years later, if I smell donuts in the morning, my stomach turns. And in the quietest moments when the air is still and no one's around, I swear I can still hear him whisper, "Pretty girl, donut." I never gave ghost stories much credit. They always felt like campfire fluff. Something you tell to spook friends when the lights are low and boredom's high. Not real. Not something that could happen to someone like me. But that changed 2 months ago. It started when I picked up a part-time night shift at a Dunkin Donuts tucked away in a forgotten little town called Reeton Falls. A fog-soaked speck near the edge of nowhere, the kind of place GPS forgets and the roads barely remember. I was broke in between gigs and desperate for something stable, even if it paid in stale donuts and burnt coffee. The ad sounded ideal. Night shift, quiet location, good pay. My name's Jack Carter. I'm 26, dropped out of college my junior year. I once had this big dream of becoming a music producer, beats, synths, studio lights. But then, life sucker punched me. My dad died in 2022, and suddenly I was the man of the house, holding things together for my mom and little sister. The dream didn't just pause, it vanished. After that, I bounced from one dead-end job to the next. Temp gigs, warehouse shifts, food service. Eventually, I landed in Reeton Falls. Rent was dirt cheap, and the town's eerie stillness felt like peace to a guy who hadn't caught his breath in years. The Dunkin' here isn't like the ones in the city. It sits alone at the corner of Ash Ridge Lane, just before an old rusted-out overpass. It's open 24/7, but after 9 p.m., it's practically a ghost town. No music, no chatter, just the hum of fluorescent lights. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Most nights it was just me, a few long-haul truckers, and maybe one or two local insomniacs. I made coffee, restocked shelves, and killed time scrolling through my phone. The manager, Ryan Matthews, was in his mid-40s, wore the same beat-up brown suede jacket every day, which always smelled faintly of cigars and something older. Mildew, maybe. He had a limp in his left leg and spoke like he'd swallowed gravel. Weird guy. Never said much unless he had to. He usually worked the evening shift and slipped out just before midnight. The first night we overlapped, he leaned over the counter and said, "You'll be alone after 11. Lock the doors. Don't let anyone in you don't recognize." His voice was low, serious. "And whatever you do, you don't go into the basement." I blinked. "There's a basement?" He didn't answer, just gave the counter 2 slow taps with his knuckles and walked away. That was it. No explanation. No warning signs. The first few weeks were uneventful. I'd clock in, clean up, brew coffee, restock the cold case. Sometimes I'd read a book or watch dumb videos to stay awake. Other times I'd just sit and stare at the flickering CCTV screens, eyes wandering now and then to the basement door tucked away at the back of the hallway. It was always locked, heavy, steel, not the kind of door you'd expect in a coffee shop. Ryan had the only key. Then came November 17th. Ryan showed up late that night. He looked like hell, skin pale, eyes bloodshot like he hadn't slept in days. He kept glancing down the back hallway, flinching at the slightest noise, like he expected something to crawl out of the shadows. "I won't be in tomorrow," he muttered, eyes fixed on the floor. I tried to lighten the mood. "Taking a night off? Lucky you." He didn't laugh, didn't even look at me. "Don't just follow the rules," he said. "Keep the doors locked, and no matter what you hear, don't open the basement." His voice had this edge to it, like he wasn't warning me out of duty, but out of fear. I nodded, unsure what to say. That night felt wrong. The air inside the shop was colder than usual, like the thermostat had given up. Even the coffee machine sputtered weirdly before kicking on. By 2:45 a.m., the lights flickered, just once, but enough to make me glance up. Not a blackout, more like a nervous tick from the building itself. I checked the circuit breaker. Everything looked fine. Back at the counter, I put on an old horror animation playlist on YouTube, something familiar to keep my brain occupied. But the unease didn't go away. It crept deeper. There's a strange kind of pressure that builds when you're alone too long. Silence stops being comforting. It grows thick, starts pulsing in your ears. Every small noise becomes significant. The buzz of the fridge feels like a scream. The clock ticks like it's counting down to something. And my thoughts kept drifting back to the basement. I couldn't stop picturing it, What was Ryan so afraid of? At exactly 3:12 a.m., I made a decision I still regret. I stood up, walked to the back hallway. The basement door loomed at the end like it was waiting for me. Up close, it looked even more out of place. Solid steel, industrial grade, not something you install in a coffee shop unless you're hiding something. And the weirdest part? My hand was already reaching for the handle like some part of me wanted to know. There was no handle, just a keycard scanner, but that night something was off. The little green light blinked steadily, and when I pushed, the door swung open with barely a sound. Unlocked, like someone had already gone in. I paused at the top of the stairs, the air pressing out from the opening in a damp metallic gust that smelled like wet iron and freezer burn. My stomach turned. One lone bulb hung above the stairwell, flickering in and out like it couldn't decide whether to stay alive. I turned on my phone flashlight and stepped inside. Concrete stairs. Solid, but every step echoed like a scream in a cathedral. My shoes made this slow, wet slap with every movement, and with each step I descended, I felt this tightening, like something unseen was noticing me, watching, breathing slower just to hear mine. At the bottom was a wide open space, windowless, quiet, but for a low hum, like an ancient refrigerator left to die. The walls were unfinished concrete, stained in places with rust or something darker. There were boxes stacked high, some torn open, their contents half spilled, as if someone had rifled through them in a hurry. Along the far wall stood a massive industrial freezer, its metal surface slick with condensation. Two metal support beams rose from the floor in the center of the room, but they looked out of place, newer than the rest of the structure, smoother, like they'd been bolted in later. My light flicked across the floor and caught on something that made my breath catch. Donuts. Hundreds of them, maybe more. Some neatly placed in piles, others torn apart. All of them rotting. Mold eating away at frosting. Jelly leaking into sticky pools. Powdered sugar turned gray with time. What the hell? I muttered, stepping forward. The moment I moved, a breeze brushed past me. I froze. It was colder than the rest of the basement, and sweet. Too sweet, like cotton candy and freezer burn and spoiled fruit. I turned in place, scanning with my light. That's when I saw her. She stood near the center of the room, wrapped in what looked like clear plastic sheeting, like something you'd find covering furniture in an abandoned house. She didn't move, just stood there, arms slightly lifted, body rigid. Her face was blurry behind the plastic, distorted by the folds and sheen. But I saw her eyes, wide, terrified, pleading. Hey, ma'am." I stepped toward her slowly, palms raised. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" She took one trembling step backward. The plastic clung tighter to her form as she inhaled, sharp and panicked, and then she shook her head violently. She bolted, disappearing behind one of the metal pillars. "Wait, hey!" I shouted, my voice bouncing off the concrete. I rushed forward, circling the pillar. Nothing. No one. "Hello?" My voice cracked. "Ma'am, I saw you. I'm not here to hurt you, Please, let me help." Then the bulb overhead popped. Pitch black swallowed the basement. My flashlight flickered once, then died. In the silence, a whisper, close enough to feel. "Are you going to help me now?" I spun around. She was inches from my face, her eyes, pure white, like milk glass marbles. The plastic was no longer just wrapped around her. It was her, merged with her skin, pulling tight over her features, pressing into her open mouth, her cheeks, her brow. She tried to breathe, choked, and then began coughing. Thick, black liquid spilled from her mouth. It hit the concrete with a sickening splat. I stumbled backward, heart punching my ribs, legs barely listening to me. I don't remember running up the stairs. I don't remember grabbing the store keys. I don't remember locking the doors or bursting into the parking lot barefoot and screaming. All I remember is the silence that followed. And then the cold. When I finally opened my eyes, the sky was washed in early morning gray. The sun peeked over the trees. I was lying on the sidewalk outside the store, soaked in sweat, heart still racing. Fog coiled around the storefront like fingers pulling back. The door was locked. I never went back. Ryan never returned either. A week later, the store was shut down. No warning, no explanation, just a faded printed sign taped to the glass. Due to unforeseen maintenance issues, this location will remain closed until further notice. I've tried to move on. I've tried to forget. But even now, 2 months later, I still can't sleep through the night. Not because of what I saw, but because of what I hear. On those nights when the world goes quiet enough to let the darkness whisper back, plastic rustling, and a voice, soft and trembling, asking the same question. Are you going to help me now? I moved to Chicago 2 weeks after college ended. No job lined up, no friends in the city, not even a half-decent plan. And honestly, that was the whole idea. My parents had done everything by the book. Loving, stable, the kind of people who sent out thank you cards for thank you cards. But their perfection felt like a vice around my throat. My hometown in Indiana was a loop I couldn't break. Same streets, same faces, same conversations playing on repeat. I was desperate for noise, for anonymity, for space to screw up without someone texting my mom about it. I found a studio apartment on the north side that was barely bigger than a walk-in closet. The walls were so thin I could hear my neighbor sneeze. The air always smelled like garlic from someone else's dinner, and the radiator clicked and clanged at night like it was trying to speak Morse code. But it was mine. No curfews, no expectations, no one hovering outside my bedroom door asking how the job hunt was going. It was the kind of freedom that felt electric, at first. Reality hit fast. My savings shriveled in a month. Freedom, it turned out, had a steep price tag. I had a digital media degree, but every job listing wanted 5 years of experience for an entry-level position. What kind of math was that? So I stopped being picky. I needed money, any money, fast. That's how I ended up at a Dunkin Donuts 5 blocks from my place. The manager, Lisa, hired me on the spot. Maybe she liked the fact that I was a broke college grad unlikely to pocket extra syrup packets. The first few weeks nearly broke me. The morning rush made me fantasize about walking into oncoming traffic. People were grouchy, barked orders without looking up, and acted like I'd insulted their families if their coffee had too much cream. The machines hissed like dying snakes. But over time, I found a rhythm. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, and the regulars started remembering my name. That's also where I met Chloe. She was everything I wasn't: loud, magnetic, unapologetic. Tattoos ran up both her arms, each one a story, none she regretted. She'd been working there a few months longer than me, and we clicked almost instantly. Maybe because we were the youngest on the team, or maybe because we both carried that quiet knowledge that this job was just a stopgap, not a destination. We bonded over customer horror stories, messy exes, half-formed dreams. She told me her dad kicked her out when she was 18. No big dramatic fight, just a quiet, final, "You're not welcome here." She was all edge on the outside, but underneath the sarcasm and eye rolls was a heart way too soft for the world. We started syncing our shifts, closing together as often as we could. It made the job bearable, fun even, until the man in the green coat started showing up. I remember the first time, Friday night, nearly closing. The place was empty, and Chloe and I were rushing to mop the floors early so we could clock out on time. He came in with a gust of cold wind, the kind that cuts through your clothes. He didn't look up, just shuffled to the counter and ordered a medium cappuccino and 1 chocolate-glazed donut, his voice low and gravelly. Paid with crumpled bills, fingers smudged with dirt. His coat was this grimy forest green thing with odd mismatched patches sewn onto it like a quilt made of wrong memories. He took the corner table by the window, sat down, and stared. Not at his drink, not out the window, at us. We tried to brush it off. Big city, weird people, Comes with the territory, right? But he came back the next Friday. Same time, same order, same seat, same stare. I swear he doesn't blink. Chloe muttered one night while scrubbing the espresso machine with a little too much force. He just sits there like some creepy-ass gargoyle. He's probably harmless, I offered, though my voice wavered. I didn't believe it. Not really. He wasn't aggressive, didn't say anything strange. But there was something about his stillness, like he was holding his breath and waiting for something to happen. Or maybe for us to. We turned it into a joke at first, called him Friday Eyes, said it like a punchline to a bad sitcom. But as the weeks passed and he kept showing up, never speaking beyond his order, never looking anywhere else, the joke stopped being funny. One night, we were 10 minutes from close. The store was quiet, lights dimmed, chairs flipped on tables. I was counting down the till, Chloe behind the counter scrolling her phone, probably watching some true crime TikTok. Then the bell over the door chimed. I didn't have to look up. I already knew. That coat. Those eyes. Chloe didn't even try to hide her sigh. Oh, great. I glanced at the clock. 5 minutes until we could lock up. 5 minutes of pretending this guy didn't make every hair on my body stand on end. 5 minutes of pretending everything was normal. He walked up to the counter slowly, his eyes locked on Chloe the entire time, unblinking, unsettling. Cappuccino, he said, voice low and dry. And a chocolate ring. I forced a smile, throat tight. Sure thing. As I turned to make the drink, Chloe muttered something and disappeared into the back, probably to take out the trash, but I knew the truth. She just didn't want to be near him. I didn't blame her. He didn't move to his usual table. Just stood there at the counter, staring. I kept my focus on the milk frother, pretending not to notice. Then I felt him lean in, close enough for his breath to hit my skin. She's really pretty, you know, he said quietly, like a secret he thought we were sharing. I didn't respond. You think she'd go for a guy like me? I kept my head down, placed the cappuccino on the counter without looking at him. That'll be $4.60. I've been watching her for a while, he said, pulling out a wad of crumpled bills. She laughs a lot. Bet she's fun in bed. My stomach twisted. I gripped the edge of the counter hard enough that my fingers ached. Still, I said nothing. You gonna pass that on? He asked, smirking. Tell her I'd like to see her outside of here sometime. Somewhere quiet. I took a deep breath and stared straight ahead. If you don't leave now, I'm calling the police. His expression didn't change. No anger, no fear. Just a smirk, like we were playing some private little game. I'll see her again, he said, backing away with his cup. You'll see. And then he walked out like nothing had happened. The rest of the night felt heavy and slow, like I was moving underwater. Chloe knew something was off the second she came back in. I kept pretending everything was fine until we clocked out, but the way my hands shook gave it away. I told her the next day. She tried to laugh it off, said guys like that were all bark, but her hands trembled when she lit a cigarette behind the store, the flame twitching in the wind. The following Friday, he didn't show, nor the one after that. We told ourselves maybe he got bored, maybe he found a new haunt, maybe he finally showered. We were wrong. 3 weeks later, Chloe and I were closing again. It was a cold, pounding rain outside, loud against the windows. The lot was empty. Puddles reflected the flickering pink and orange from the neon signs in the window. It looked like a movie set. Too clean, too quiet. Chloe slipped out back for a smoke like she always did. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I checked the back room. Empty. Chloe? I called out. Nothing. I stepped outside. The rain hit like ice, soaking through my shirt instantly. I looked down. A cigarette still burned on the pavement. The end glowed orange in the dark. Inside, her phone was still behind the counter. Her keys. Her purse. She wouldn't leave those. Ever. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped the phone. I still remember how my voice cracked when I called 911, how surreal the words felt in my mouth. My coworker, she's missing. The next 48 hours were hell. Police interviews, phone calls, silence. Hope turned to dread, dread into something darker. They found her body in the woods off a highway 2 miles away. The store closed for 3 days after that. Lisa brought in a grief counselor and a box of Chloe's things from the break room. Her hoodie, a notebook with doodles, a half-eaten protein bar. She left it behind the counter like someone might pick it up. No one ever did. They never found the man in the green coat. No working cameras out back, no plates, no clear footage. Just a few vague eyewitnesses, and the memory burned into my mind. His eyes, his voice, that awful smirk. I kept working at Dunkin for another month. I don't know why. Habit, maybe, or fear of the silence waiting if I stopped. Maybe I thought staying gave me some small measure of control. But things changed. I stopped laughing with customers. I flinched every time the doorbell rang. I closed early when I could get away with it. I barely slept. The city, once alive with freedom and noise, now felt like a trap, an echo chamber of fear. One evening, a regular asked, "Hey, where's the tattoo girl, the loud one?" I mumbled something about her moving away and then fled to the back, locked the door, and cried harder than I ever had. 2 weeks later, I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases and left Chicago. I didn't go back to Indiana. I couldn't bear the questions. Instead, I ended up in Milwaukee, found a studio apartment above a laundromat. It's quiet here, sometimes too quiet. But I've started writing. Just little things, memories, fragments of conversations, faces. I wrote Chloe's name in big block letters across the first page of a spiral notebook I keep next to my bed. Sometimes when I walk down the street and pass a coffee shop, I freeze. Just for a second. Because I think I see a flash of green in the crowd. A coat. A figure. But it's never him. Still, I tell myself someone will find him. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not even this year. But people like him don't stay hidden forever. Until then, I keep her name alive. I say it out loud sometimes, just to remind the world she was here. She was more than a headline, more than a cautionary tale. She was my friend, and she deserved better than to become a ghost.